So here's my project lifecycle steps. So this is just a model that we have for our advanced project management that lists out the steps and consequently the reporting in Unanet of those metrics in green here. So you can see here it follows along very similar to like the PMI project steps. There's project bid and our project initiation, starting and creating of the projects, planning of resources on those projects, and when you have those resources assigned, notified and assigned, you want to promote the authorization for those people to charge time, and that's the resource assignment in Unanet terms. And then of course there's the project execution, the collection of time and expenses in the in their timesheets and expenses by the what I call the worker bees, and then monitoring that and be able to forecast. You're looking forward what your projections are based on actuals and that forecasting of those assignments or budgets, if you will. And then finally closing out the project. And again, all of our metrics that we're going to be collecting today and showing today are applicable for all three of our billing types: cost plus, time and materials, and fixed price in the system. So I have just a little scenario for us to kind of go through today. I have an RFP out, and it is to design, code, and test and train for some retina scanners, and they're going to be for the Air Force ultimately. And so here's some specifics about our RFP scenario here. So again, we're delivering software, hardware, training, and installation of these retina scanners to the Air Force perhaps. So I have a period of performance here. The period's going to be a contract starting today, September 1st, November 30th. Just stepping back a little bit in time, we have an RFP set up, and we hopefully are going to give the customer say an amount that we're going to be able to bid and say we can do the job for this X amount of money. So that's what we're going to work on in our first steps here. And then, hopefully the award will happen August 24th, just in the past. So we have to skip around in the whole history of things. So the labor part of this RFP is required to be time and materials, and it's based on a pre-approved GSA schedule. So we're assuming this is going to be a government contract RFP. I've already negotiated my GSA schedules with billing rates, and those billing rates for those roles are labor categories are for a project manager, I'm able to bill out $145. For a systems engineer, I can bill out $175, and for my technician, I can bill out $52. So that's already set up and contracted with the GSA schedule. In addition, I have a work breakdown structure that we've agreed upon, and it's just very, very simple in my little scenario here. It's project management, design, code, and test. So pretty simple here in my scenario for the work breakdown structure. I have a secondary requirement to actually purchase 12 retina scanners, and that's going to be a cost plus contract. It'll be non-labor contract, cost plus, with a fixed fee of 4% on top of that for my equipment materials, which are these purchasing of these retina scanners. I do have provided provisional rates for my bid, and that is to capture fringe, overhead, and G&A at these particular rates. So I'm going to be able to look at my overhead or indirect rates and the cost of that, allocation of those rates and cost to the project cost for the total project cost, especially for my cost plus contract. And then finally, I have a fixed price option to do training on those retina scanner usage, and that's a maximum value, fixed price value that the customer is going to give $7,500 here. So here's just an example, very simple RFP. It's not really about any of the work activities and that you normally see that says, you are required to be able to provide information about doing the different work activities and the project and the design and code and test and parameters and the tools you're going to use to do it, etc. It's really about just managing the projects on this in Unanet. All right, so this should look familiar. We've got our first step, that project bid, where we are going to create 3 projects for the bid, and to be able to look at planning resources and planning our expenses to see how much we think we can bid and charge the customer to get the job done and make a profit. So in that bid process, there are several sub-steps that may happen. You're going to receive your request for proposal. You're going to set up projects to be able to mimic the requirements, and you're going to plan resources, plan expenses, and get some pricing. Now, typically, you're going to go back to your engineers, your technicians, project management, and they're going to look at the pricing there and say, well, you know, maybe we can do some repricing. Maybe we can cut some corners here. Instead of doing a project management for 10 hours a period, maybe we can do it in 8 hours a period. Or maybe our technicians can do, you know, a little less prep on the training and modify that to be, you know, 6 hours versus 16 hours or something. So there's going to be some repricing and some discussion with your tech folks to understand, you know, how can we really get the job done in a very concise format. And then you're going to format that, that proposal into a pricing proposal for your customer. So our contracts manager, I have a Carrie contracts manager in my Unanet system, and her goal is to ultimately internally reach a 7.5% profit on this activity. Otherwise, it's not there's no reason for us to go ahead and bid this project if we can't get, you know, can't make money on it. So our goal is internally to have a 7.5% profit. We have work activities. We're going to be working that at the direct company site on our site. We're going to set up our projects and tasks. That contracts manager, that's her job. And then we're going to submit an internal cost proposal to the program director to see if we need to reallocate resources, maybe adjust the work activities and labor categories to do the works in less time, or whatever we can do to make sure that we can get the job done as effective as possible in reaching our 7.5% profit goal. So that will happen, and they will, contracts manager will plan, you know, placeholder resources and expenses and come up with a bid, and then it gets sent off to, you know, the powers that be. They're going to decide upon the award. So once the contract is awarded, and let's pretend in our situation that of course we won the award, we had the most competitive bid, that we have to initiate our real active projects, or billable projects here. So that Carrie contracts would indeed make copies of those projects that were RFP projects and copy them to real active billable projects for setup. And there are a few things that might be part of that setup that would include copying those projects, making sure that the cost plus project is changed to fixed price, because we're going to show you, I'm going to do some costing on that as if it's a cost plus contract, but it's really going to be that fixed price $7,500 for the training. They will be billable projects, they will be open active projects as opposed to our proposal projects that were inactive and not billable and not chargeable. We will update our funded value and bill dollar labor and bill dollar expenses amount, because we have a funded value that the government has agreed. We've won the award. They've agreed to pay us an X amount to do the job. And we're going to limit any billing that we have to that funded value so we don't bill over that. And we have that capability in Unanet with just one checkbox. We also are going to assign the project manager of this project as the project lead role in Unanet terms to manage the contract. Because typically the contracts manager, you know, is going to put in all this budget information and set up those projects in Unanet, but really you don't want your project manager to adjust any of those budget fields and funded value, et cetera, once it's set up. So really the project lead it might be a best practice for you to have a project lead really manage the project, so they can modify the task information and run reports on that and do resource planning and resource assigning, but not modify the original project setup and those funded values and bill dollar values. You want to also enable time and expense charging for these billable projects now that are initiated, and then you want to set up invoicing because your billing manager is going to be invoicing these out. And in our case, we have a group of 3 projects that we're going to connect together and be able to bill out all in one invoice. So then at that point in time, we would have our project lead, which is the manager in your organization, plan real resources, identify the real resources and labor categories that are going to be working on this, this project, the retina scanners. And once you have those in place, we'll be able to look at that baseline or reporting on those plans in Unanet. That's the soft booking of our resources and expenses. And once we have that in place and everybody's in place, we can have one button and assign those people to be assigned. So again, we're hiring resources, we're selecting the cost structure to be able to associate those provisional rates. We're going to set up those labor categories that are those GSA scheduled rates that we've agreed upon for the next 5 years because we have that agreement. We're going to set up that project leads dashboard, which in your organization is that project manager. We'll review everything with our internal program director, and when we've approved that, we're going to probably lock that baseline plan so we have that baseline to be able to compare to our budgets and then our actuals. So now we're going to assign our resources, and that's just basically hitting that one button from our planning grid to assign the named resources. Initially, we're going to allow the budget to be exceeded. We're going to have a budget of hours per pay period, or in my case, I'm going to have a semi-monthly period. We're going to allow the budget to be exceeded, and we're going to block that down closer to the end of our contract, which our contract in our scenario here is from September 1 to November 30th. We'll initially set up our alerts for our projects to be at the 75% for that billable dollar amount and elapsed time, just so that we will get automatic trigger when we reach the 75%. And then when we have that, we'll update that toward the end of the execution of the project. And again, we're setting up our project leads dashboard to have easy click into our 3 reports on the dashboard. So we come in once every pay period, in our case semi-monthly period, check our forecast dashboard with the 3 easy reports and know if we're on track or not. The project execution is just that. It's collecting time and material. It's collecting time and expenses in the timesheets and expenses, the worker bees, as I have them here. They'll charge time for the first pay period. They can check their eyeglasses in their timesheet for the budget they've been given for that pay period or time period. Whoever is authorized to purchase the retina scanners will do that purchasing, and then all of those transactions will go through the approval process for the duration of the contract. So the power of Unanet, so the focus, I thought this might be kind of fun for us to read through here. Thou shalt not lose money, and thou shalt not leave money on the table. So we're always looking at the end in mind. So what that really means is we've agreed on a set amount with the government, right? Our customer has agreed the funded value is X amount. You know, in our case it's a dollar amount, but just say it's $300,000. We don't want to lose any money. We don't want to obviously go over that amount of money, because then we're going to lose our profit, our internal profit goal of 7.5%. But we certainly don't want to lose money, have money left on the table either, and come underneath that $300,000, because that's money that the government could be paying us and that will help in our profit. So we're always looking at the end revenue goal in mind in our management of this. We are going to execute our dashboard, our saved reports on the project leads dashboard, and we're going to do that just once at the end of every pay period. In our case, it's the semi-monthly map for my little demo system or my company here. And then at the end of each month, we're going to have our billing manager come in and post the transactions that have occurred for that month. They're going to create an invoice. They're going to look it over, make sure everything's correct on it, and then complete it and send an email copy of that invoice directly to the customer. All of maybe 3 or 4 minutes once everything is set up, and it's not a big deal for that billing manager to come in and take care of this for us and get our invoicing cycle really short and concise. Then nearing the end of the execution, we're going to kind of nail it down a little bit. We're going to allow the budget not to exceed on our assignments. We're going to change that to be able to nail down to make sure that they don't go past the budget of hours. We're going to go back and set up our alerts to be from 75% to 95% to really narrow down the triggering points and say we're almost at the end there, to make sure that we're using up all the funds, all of our allocations, all of our resources in the labor categories, but we're not going over. And then ensuring that funded value is consumed, but again, not exceeded, which is what I just said. And then finally, once it's complete, we're going to do a project closeout. We'll change the project status of our projects to closed. We will evaluate if our contract really was profitable. Did we meet our 7.5% goal? Did we go over the funded value amount and leave money on the or did we leave money on the table by not consuming all of the funds that we've agreed that the customer was going to be able to pay us? We'll update our project notes for our projects and list any lessons learned that we figured out along the way to be able to document that for, again, the next RFP. So we want to really empower you to embrace this whole concept of this life cycle of a project or a set of contract, which makes up a set of projects here. And so let's take a look at that now in Unanet. Check my time here, because I do want to be able to show you everything that I have. Okay, so I've logged in to my Unanet instance, and you can see here I am the contracts manager, carry contracts. So I've got the contracts, and I'm in the bid area now. So I've got a set of projects that I've saved to my listing here. My Sparta is my customer in this case, my made-up customer, and projects are the proposed projects. So I have a list of just those 3 projects here. So you can see here I've saved a list so I can easily access my RFP projects. In my naming convention, I've even called them RFP, so we know. Here is my cost plus opportunity. That's a project type of high, so I can do some reporting on just my proposal projects or opportunity projects along with my pipeline for my direct billable projects. Here's my labor that I had that we decided that based on the requirements, it was time and materials, and I had a work breakdown structure associated with that. And then finally, I had my training project. That's an opportunity. And since it is a fixed price, I'm going to bid it out initially as cost plus, because I want to see what the cost is for my trainer to do the work and do the training and prep for the training and have some amount to make a profit of that 7.5% on this as well. So I want to initially internally bid it out as cost plus to see if I'm going to make that $7,500. So let's take a look first at my labor, my T&M. I've got an opportunity status that I've set up in my configuration of my Unanet that's inactive. They're not active projects. I certainly don't want anybody charging time to these projects. I want to be able to have those as separate. And I also have my probability, my project type as a probability of high. I really do think that I'm going to be winning this award, so I would include these as my in my reporting because I do have the ability to report on project types. I'm managing and going to be requiring tasks for time reporting and expense reporting, so I'm going to be planning at that level as well. Now right now, here are my dates that are required. I do want to enforce my project and task dates to go along with that, so I ensure I'm not charging expenses or time outside of these dates. And I don't have a billable amount yet because I haven't planned yet in this year. I'm just setting up my projects here, so I don't have that funded value of what that is going to be just yet. Again, I have my accounting, time and materials, my cost structure that denotes the percentage indirect rates that I have. Remember, we were given the provisional rates of 60, 30, and 10, I think it was. And then access, you don't want anyone else planning or self-signing users. You want it to be, really locked down so that it's just for proposals. You're not going to activate time reporting or expense reporting here. These are proposal projects. You're not going to have future charges. The key settings here as a best practice is to always have the labor category, have the defined bill rate, and the person's cost rate would have the cost rate amount there for the time and materials, and always requiring a labor category in this scenario. And then you'll see here my expenses. I'm not allowing my expenses just yet. And then, of course, my alerts at the 75% to start out with for my proposal. Here's my task and work breakdown structure here. Mimics the 4 tasks, and they're just going to be linked to the project dates as well. So you'll see they're 9/1 to 11/30. And then my labor categories. I'm going to limit my labor categories to these GSA agreed rates, and these are the rates that were agreed upon by that GSA schedules here. So if I have other labor categories in the system, I certainly don't want to have any of those used in my assignments or my plans in this case. So I want to limit them, so that's just really ensuring that I'm keeping those GSA schedule rates in the system for just this contract here. All right, so going back to my project list, I have a similar cost plus for my expenses. I have my budget here that hasn't been filled in quite yet because I really don't know what the cost of that is going to be for those scanners because it's cost plus. I have an expense type that I've created for retina scanners here. I don't have a markup per se, but I do have that cost plus type in the accounting and that additional burden cost. It's going to be based on the cost of those ODCs, which is my other direct costs, my expenses that are mapped, and it's going to be a contractual type. It was given in the contract in the RFP to be a 4% factor. And then finally, I have my training project, which initially I'm going to be bid out as cost plus. I click into here twice, double click in there, I can see right now I've set it up to be just that billing type of cost plus in my accounting, and I've given it a factor, and I've done a little calculations outside here, prep that to reach that 7.5% profit goal on my projects, I want to have the factor here marked up to be 8.2% here. So you'll see that in some reporting here shortly. All right, so let me show you. The next step is to plan. I've got a people planner here of some TBDs, some placeholders. TBD licenses are these placeholder licenses that have a labor category associated with it, and some rates and cost rates, some estimate cost rates to see, you know, what typically it would cost for a project manager, system engineer, technician, etc. And I can plan these placeholders without using real named resources and their licensing. So these TBDs are a license type that's called a unisource license, TBD designator, and they're typically about 1/3 of the cost. So they're great in these bid and proposal effort here. So I've got a planner here, and I've made an estimate here of hours for my different roles or labor categories on my different tasks here. And here's some training where I've got some training for specific dates for my trainer. And so that is my planner, and I've saved that to my dashboard. So I easily get to that list. It's a Sparta People Planner for my proposal. And I can look to see what that proposal is going to look like. So here it is. Here's the amount of money it is going to, that I'm going to send to my customer to say it's going to cost you a total of $132,610.49 for me to do this job. Now, internally, you may go back internal to your tech people to see if we can reduce those hours in any way, shape, or form for any of those tasks. You know, there may be, you know, reevaluating there, reshifting, repricing internally, but ultimately, when you run this revenue and funding summary report that's available with the tracking and the portfolio license, you'll see it's on the plans, and it would be a total of all 4 projects of $132,610. Now, this project here, we know, is going to be the fixed price amount of $7,500. So really, the total price is going to be not $71.95, but the replace $7,500, because that's what we contractually said the government or that customer was going to give us. So it's really going to be that total amount. So stepping forward, we can go back to our dashboard again and look at the profit proposal on this. We want to see if we're going to be making enough profit overall for these 3 contracts. Now you can see here I have a different view that might be not familiar to you if you're using any of these costing reports. This is the cost summary and status, the periodic form. And you'll know in a couple of releases ago we had the ability to create different definitions of these reports. So you can see here I'm most interested in that revenue line, so I put it at the very top here. And the second thing I'm interested in is that total profit line here. Now I've got this listed out as my 3 projects separately, but ultimately what I want to do is I want to look at all 3 of these together. So I'm going to roll them up, look at the same view based on just my plans, my soft booking for these projects that make up my bid, and look to see that this is the amount that I am going to bid to the customer. Actually, it's probably going to be the $7,500. So what I have, my ultimate goal here is to get to that 7.5% overall profit, and I'm reaching it here with the 8.21 overall for not only the scanners, the purchase of the scanners, the training, but all the time and materials labor. Okay? So what I could do at this point in time is change over my proposal projects to literally be, I know that I'm going to make my profit, so I'm going to change that to be a fixed price contract now, because I know that I've got that amount ready to go, and I'm going to put in that $7,500, save that here, because that's the contractual agreement that they are going to pay me that $7,500, so I'll put it in the bill dollar amount here as well. And then since it's fixed price, I can set up a one-time item to be able to say, okay, I'm going to be for training, all 3 sessions, and I will collect that billable amount. Let's just say it's at the end of the contract on November 30th, and it is that $7,500. So when I go back to run my proposal, ultimate proposal report, Here's my $7,500 now. You see that here. And it's $132,915 as a total amount. And then I can run my PM profit proposal here and roll it all up into one. Here's the roll-up option here to look at all projects together. And again, I'm making these 3 projects together and look to see what the total amount is. Now, I've got a budget value filled in right now for just the one project. I would go back and fill in the other 2 here now that I know what the pricing is going to be, the funded value for each one of those projects. So that's my bid, that's my proposal. We'll step forward in time. We've won the award. My contracts, Carrie Contracts says, oh great, finally, this is fantastic. She copies the proposal projects into award projects. They're different. They're now project type of billable. They're open in their status, and you can see here my cost plus is that fixed price. So here are my actual projects that are open and chargeable. You'll see now we have the budget amounts are filled in. I've got the funded value, the bill dollar amount here for my time materials. I've got time materials here, my funded value here. I'm limiting the billing to be just this funded value. I have time enabled, and also I'm doing future charges just because I'm pretending that I'm going to charge future time here in my system, although it's still September 1, the contract's due November 30th. So I had to have some future charges here. But to be DCA compliant, you would not want to have that set. I kept the same bill rate source and the cost rate source here for my labor category coming from the bill rate GSA schedule, and my cost rates coming from the person profile. And then also enabling my, well, for this one, for not expenses, because we just have for time and labor here. It's my labor project. Here are my tasks. And my billing is set up here. I'll take a moment with our billing. I'm going to bill all 3 of my projects together. So the contracts administrator has set up my standard invoicing, my payment terms, my number formatting, and let the Unanet system know that I've got 2 contributor projects or groups of projects. They're going to take the lead of this one project, the labor project here. So here's where my expense and training projects are all together, and it can tell them that I can invoice everything on one invoice. I can generate invoices here. This is a key checkbox here to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to create invoices here for the project, in my case monthly. I've got contacts set up based on the project organization or the customer, and the owning organization, which is typically who's recognizing the revenue, whether it's the company or some group, a sub-company or division. And I do have the ability to have additional formats. I have the one initial format that's the summary format, but I do have the ability to designate sub-formats here that would be the 2nd, 3rd pages of more detailed information, as you can see here. All right, so the other thing is my labor categories. You can see here, again, I've restricted the labor categories to just those labor categories that are agreed upon with the GSA schedules. And then I can look at my people plans. I did want to look at the people plans here because I have swapped out the plans of those TBDs to real named assigned people. And here are my people. You can see here. And the key is I've done it on a semi-monthly pay period because that in my company is semi-monthly. So you want to plan in the same periods or frequency that your pay periods are. So that's a best practice as well to really keep down the reporting and granularity. I've overridden and made sure I've selected the correct labor category that's going to give me the correct bill rate, and then the cost rate of that person is coming from the person profile, and then the budget of hours here. Okay, so that's my labor project here. So I've done the same thing with my expense project here. It's cost plus. So I just have the key here is that for expenses you have to assign someone to that expense cost plus contract. So there's a plan here or an assignment here for the project manager to create an expense to purchase those retina scanners. And then finally I have my training fixed price project here. The billing is set up here for fixed price. You can see my scenario here is I'm going to bill out the $2,500 after each training session is done, and I'm going to have 3 sessions here as opposed to the $1,500. So I'll be able to recognize those revenue on 11/10, 11/18, and 11/26 after each training session occurs. And then looking at the plan sets here of my planning, here is my plan for Todd the trainer to work on doing the prep and the training for these sessions. So on Curie Contracts Dashboard, I do have the people planner of the awarded people. The key here that I wanted to show or let you know about is when you're transferring your plans from your TBD person to your actual person, the key is to have both of those in the grid. So I probably initially had my project manager with those hours here in 10-10-10, and I was able to just click into the project manager, select the other person that I wanted those hours to go to. In my case, it was the project manager, TBD project manager, going to the actual project manager, which I have selected here, and it would move those hours and everything associated with it, along with the cost element and labor category, over to the project manager. So the key is to have the row and the plan of who you're coming from, swapping to, in addition to who you're swapping to in that grid itself. That's what I wanted to show you. And again, we can colorize this grid for our named resources to see who's underbooked, who's overbooked, who's in the red, over 100%, etc. And I can do multiple tasks here at the task level, and I can also do multiple projects here. As you can see here, here's my training project as well. Training. All right. Then the great thing about that is once all this is in place, I can hit one button, and I'm automatically going to assign all of these people to start working. They're authorized to work on the contracts, on the projects, and start working. September 1, let's go for it. So I would hit the assign button, and it would create a budget or resource assignment of those plans and a copy, and it would authorize those people to start charging time in their timesheets. So when I look at my my authorization, my AF authorization, this is the schedule details, but it shows me the authorization of each of the people that are charging time to my different projects and what their budget is, and I'm stepping forward in 3 months to see what the actuals really were. So I went ahead and charged time for the full 3 months for each one of these and see that there's a little bit of difference here and there that we want to look at. So we had some variance in our projects. So the schedule details is a great way to show the actuals plus the budgets, the initial authorization, and the time periods of those hours in that time period. All right, so we have, also lastly, we have our water projects, and I wanted to show that the project lead is really my Paul project. Once I have all my budget information set at the accounting and the budgeting tab, I don't want the project manager in my company to go and modify any of those. So I've set a project lead that's really the project manager that's going to manage these projects. Okay, so let me log out here and let's log in to Paul Projects, because now we're pretty much in execution mode, right? We're in execution of the project, and our people are going to be charging time. And I have a dashboard set up for Paul Project. The key here is some saved dashboard. Again, I've got my saved lists of planners and assigners and my list to go to the awarded projects here, just like I had for my Curie contracts. But the key is to look at 3 key metrics here. The first metric is a saved report, shared report, and it's my revenue metric forecast. It's looking at actuals through the end of this month right now, and then assignments going forward. And the key is that I want to be able to look to see what my overall, if I've got any backlog, if I'm over allocated for my resources based on actual so far, or if I'm under allocated, which means I'm leaving money on the table. In this scenario, I'm under allocated right now of about $1,400 in my labor. So for some reason, I'm under allocated. If I were to finish the project as on schedule right now, I would have $1,400 that I would be leaving on the table that I wouldn't be able to bill out to the customer for full amount of work. And that full amount of work is at $132,915. So it might be worth taking a look to drill down to see, well, where is that? What's happening now? Why have I not spent every single dollar, especially after the first months of work? So the second report that my project manager would look at to kind of drill down to see would be my saved profit metric forecast report. That's that cost summary and status report. Again, I'm running actuals through the end of the first month, and then budgets or resource assignments moving forward. So you can see here, it looks like I've got a little bit of deviation here in my labor here. So I've got my profit on target here based on actuals for the first month and projection assignments going forward for the second. But I am off that $1,400 here, and it looks to be something to the initial state of that labor area here. Okay. So the next area to look at is to try to understand or drill down to what's happening in my people charging time. So I would go to I like to go to this burn chart here. It's really the periodic performance report to be able to see billable charges where there is a variance. And I'm looking at the plans and actuals. Very well could be the budgets and actuals, but I'm looking at that baseline and where the difference is of what I've budgeted here. And you can see here, I've got some difference here of 16 hours here, and I've got another 16 hours here that's a variance here as well. This one looks to be pretty good for the Paul project. And what's happening, just because I happen to know that, oh, you know what, I had a Labor Day that is occurred here, and I had a holiday here where people didn't charge time, they had off, and I didn't account for that in my initial planning or budgeting of hours. So I am leaving some money on the table. It might be that Terry Technician, Emily Engineer might charge time, overtime, a little bit in their next pay periods to be able to accommodate that work. I'm not sure yet, but it's really about a threshold that you're willing to live within. It might be $2,000, it might be $1,000, whatever that is for that revenue and funding summary report, to check up on that spend plan. All right, so we go forward in time. I'm going to just pop off to, so let's go ahead and do the billing first. Just assuming that there's a billing manager that's going to do the invoicing of our contract. Now, I've invoiced for September and October, and this is my invoicing amounts and billing amounts through getting ready to bill out for my last amount here. So you can see here I've got my billings for each one of them. I've billed out for my expenses. I've billed out for a couple months worth of labor. I can drill down to see exactly those transactions that occurred. I even had a few adjustments that I had in the system, so I could show you that for corrections here. So you can see here, this is each of the transactions that make up that billed amount. So that's a great ability to be able to drill down into this billing and revenue, and being able to compare that to that funded value, that agreed upon value that the government is, or the customer is going to be paying us. And again, here you can see the $7,500. The $7,500 is here in the revenue and the billing amount, because remember I had those dates all in November, and that's the last month that I haven't billed out per se yet, but I'm going to be billing out shortly. Okay, so let's skip ahead in time shortly. You can see here I do have charts that are being able to show me great information about these billable performance in a visual view. I've got my actuals compared to the assignments, the resource assignments, and the plans. You can see my plans and resource assignments match, but I have some variance in actuals. I was short here, leaving some money on the table. It looks like I'm actually short here too, leaving some money on the table in November. And just it's probably that Thanksgiving holiday that's I didn't account for as well. And maybe an hour or two here that I'm leaving short here in October for some reason. So I purposely undercharged to show you there's some kind of a variance here. All right, and then also there's the trending lines here. My green trend line is my resource line, the resource assignment line, and then my actuals is this yellow line here. I can click into any one of these bars to go down to the details report. So I can see here looking at the billable charges for my budget and plan. That's great to be able to drill down and see those details here, and then also hover over the actual dollar amount here. So for the October time frame, I'm looking at actuals of this dollar amount for my billable revenue, because I'm running it on revenue. So I wanted to show, you do have the option to have these charts on your project manager's dashboard as well. So skipping forward, we're going to go to our revenue metric, and we're going to change our metric to look at our dates moving forward. Or we're going to look at actuals through, let's just go toward the, for the sake of time, the end of November, the end of the project here. So it's all actuals through the end of the project. So it's not even including any forecast. Where did I come up with in my, my spend plan here? So you can see here I am short $3,600 and some change here. So I'm probably over any thresholds of my spend. I've left that amount of money on the table that I should have been able to charge my customer for. So that's a deficit there. So, you know, you have your alert set, you'd have your allowed to exceed cased in. So, but in this case, we're not overcharging, we're not going over our revenue target, we're under our revenue target because I've got this backlog here. So let's go back to our cost summary and status and look at the profit metric. And let's look at a future time here, doing the same thing, looking in the future and looking at actuals through November 30th, the end of the project, and seeing what this is saying. Am I still meeting my profit percentage here? Well, yeah, I'm actually meeting my profit percentage here, the 12.43. I've done really well, probably especially with my fixed price training project here. But I do have that backlog here, and I probably want to determine where was that backlog. I have more detailed, more granular reports to be able to show where that backlog might have occurred. So we'll go back to my burn chart and report, my periodic performance report, and I can see here that, let's see here, project performance report, see my criteria. I'm looking at plans and actuals and looking at November 1. Okay, so we're good on the dates. And I do have my variances here, probably a date in Labor Day and a date in Thanksgiving here for a couple of my people here. So that's probably where my differences has occurred. I've got 32 hours total and where that billable amount has come from. So the lesson learned here is that I need to accommodate for those holidays and not and plan around those holidays and know when those holidays are and plan instead of 40 hours per week, maybe 32 during those hours. And accommodate for vacation time too. This could be done if I were planning with an FTE. You know, typically a FTE might be 92% of the time and not fully 100% of the time for an FTE or a full-time equivalent for my people, for my TBDs, and actually my named resources here. And then again, I could, as a billing manager, come to my revenue and summary and go ahead and be able to post these last transactions, create an invoice. And so let's go to our financials, just pretending that we really are the billing manager here, which we're not, we're the project manager here. So typically it would be your accounting invoicing person. I'm going to go ahead and invoice for the end of November. And I will do the post date of that in November as well, at the end of the contract, that final amount. And you can see here I've got my final T&M labor, I've got my fixed priced amount here. Well, I don't want my opportunity to show up here. I'm not going to bill that out for sure. But I do want to bill out my, oh, that's the wrong one. I'm going to do different ones here. Let's do my AF ones. Let's see here. Oh, I think I've already created I've already posted those transactions already. So I can go now. I'm sorry about that. I already posted those transactions, so now I can go in and add an invoice for it because it showed up in the revenue and funding and I wanted you to be able to see it. I'm going to create that invoice. I had to think about that for a moment. Sorry about that. I want to do end of November, and I'll put the post date for the end of November as well. Do really quickly here. And list that. And there's my invoice. I can look at that invoice or look at the posted data here, creating the invoice. I've got a total of transactions of these 80,700, and I can drill down to see what's making up that amount here. This is my my October and September charges here of what's been billed. Here's what I've unbilled here. These are my November charges. So these are the transactions here. And also my training as well, the fixed price $2,500 for each training event in the month of November. So I've got my fixed price amounts coming on board here. And I can generate my invoice, go back to listing it, and this little diamond indicates that I've got more than one project grouped together on the invoice. So I can take a look at that invoice now to see the final amount of the $536. And I've got some details here showing my fixed price amount as well as the total amount here for the time and the materials labor. And then more details here as I've broken it out based on your customer requirement and what they would want to see as far as specifics about the charges. All right, and then the last step would be to complete that invoice here of approval. And you might have your project manager or project lead approve that amount to make sure it really is the amount that you wanted to send out to your customer. And then the last step is truly the closing of the project. So here are my awarded projects here. At this point in time, I would want to set these projects to a status of close. I might want to go into my labor project here and add a note that talks about some information about the lessons learned. It might be that I would want to accommodate my plans for holidays and also vacation time. Maybe instead of planning 100%, I would want to plan at 92% to accommodate for those amounts there. And in your system, you may have note types of different types here. That's defined in your configuration. Here's my lessons learned and the fact that I'm going to have it closed out, and I could assign it to the project lead or assign it to someone else, maybe higher up in the chain, or my contracts manager. Maybe I want to assign it to my contracts manager so that she knows, Carrie Contracts knows next time to accommodate for these lessons learned. And when she creates that initial plan, she'll accommodate for that, and we'll be right on the money for our next project. All right, I've certainly talked for quite a bit here.